The clock on the wall was the only sound in the room. Tick, tick, tick. It was 7:42 p.m. The stew was still bubbling on the stove, but I'd stopped stirring it a while ago. My hands were trembling. I don't know why, but the silence in that house felt wrong. Too heavy, too sharp. My name is Margaret, I whisper into the void of memory even now. I'm 63 years old, and that night I learned fear in a way I never had before. It began so simply. I was staying at my daughter-in-law's house to help with my grandson, Oliver. Just for a few weeks, I told myself. Tessa had been distant lately, and Oliver, poor boy, had grown quieter every visit. I thought maybe I could help. That evening, he'd been sitting at the kitchen table, drawing. His small hands moved nervously across the paper, eyes flicking toward the hallway every few seconds. I remember smiling, trying to sound cheerful. "What are you making, sweetheart?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Just drawing. Can I see?" He shook his head quickly. "Not yet, Grandma." His little voice trembled. I wanted to ask more, but before I could, Tessa's voice sliced through the hallway, smooth and sharp like ice. "Oliver, it's time for your shower." Oliver's whole body stiffened. He stuffed the paper under his arm so fast I barely saw it. I frowned. "Honey, it's okay," but he was already slipping off his chair. And as he passed by me, his small hand brushed mine. Something crumpled against my palm. I froze. He didn't look at me, just whispered, "Please don't let her see." Then he ran toward the hall. I stood there, heart thudding in my chest, the note pressed against my fingers. The air felt suddenly colder. I looked down at the wrinkled paper, still warm from his touch. When I unfolded it, I had to blink twice before I could read the words. "Leave now. Mom is dangerous." For a second, my brain refused to process it. My sweet, gentle Oliver, the boy who once cried when he accidentally stepped on a worm, had written this? About his mother? The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. I could almost see his small hand struggling to form each letter. I heard footsteps, quick, approaching. Instinctively, I shoved the note into my apron pocket just as Tessa appeared at the doorway. "Dinner smells wonderful," she said, smiling that perfect, polished smile of hers. Her blonde hair was perfectly set, her nails immaculate. But there was something wrong in her eyes, something that didn't match the rest of her face. "Thanks," I managed to say. My throat felt dry. "It's almost ready." She stepped closer, her gaze flicking to my hands. "What were you reading?" My stomach flipped. "Oh, nothing, just recipe notes." Her smile didn't move. "You don't cook with paper, Margaret." I tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. Old habits die hard. Then Oliver called faintly from upstairs. "Mom, stay put, darling," she sang back, voice sugar-sweet. Then she turned back to me. "You know, I'm really grateful you're here. Oliver adores you." The way she said it made my skin crawl. I forced a smile. "He's a good boy?" "He is," she said. "But he worries too much. He makes up stories." My pulse quickened. "Stories?" She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "You haven't noticed. He's been saying strange things about me, about the house." Her tone was calm, but every word felt like a knife grazing my skin. I hadn't noticed," I lied. She nodded slowly, then stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Good, because I'd hate for any misunderstandings between us. Something in her voice made my blood run cold. She turned toward the sink, then paused. "Actually, may I see what you were reading?" "I'm dying of curiosity." My heart stopped. "I told you," I said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like mine. "It's nothing." She reached toward my apron. I stumbled back. "Tessa, please." She moved fast, faster than I thought she could. Her hand darted into my pocket and snatched the crumpled paper. "Tessa, don't—" She was already smoothing it open. Her smile vanished. Her eyes flicked up to mine, burning with something dark and furious. "Where did you get this?" she asked quietly. I found it." "Found it?" she repeated, voice trembling just slightly. "Or did Oliver give it to you?" "Tessa, he's just a child." She stepped closer, her breath hot against my face. "Children don't write lies like this unless someone tells them to." I didn't. But before I could finish, she turned on the faucet, lit a match from the counter, and held the paper over the sink. "Please don't," I whispered. Her eyes never left mine as she dropped the match. The note curled, blackened, and shriveled before my eyes. The smell of burning paper filled the room. Tessa smiled again, that same eerie, perfect smile. "You shouldn't read things that aren't meant for you." I couldn't breathe. She turned off the faucet, letting the ashes swirl down the drain. "Dinner's getting cold," she said sweetly, as if nothing had happened. Then she walked away. I just stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, feeling my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The kitchen clock ticked louder and louder, until that was all I could hear. Tick, tick, tick. I looked at the empty sink, at the faint gray ashes clinging to the metal, and I knew deep down that something terrible was hiding behind those polished smiles and soft voices in that house. That was the night I realized something was deeply, deeply wrong in this house. After that night, after the note, after the burning, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards made my body tense. Every whisper of wind through the window sounded like footsteps. But lying there in the dark, my thoughts drifted backward to the life I'd had before all of this. The life I thought was safe. I used to be a school teacher, 3rd grade. 26 years of glue sticks, spelling tests, and little hands tugging on my sleeves. I loved it. I loved them. Children were always simple to understand. They didn't hide their pain behind politeness, and I had a husband who adored me. Robert. He was the kind of man who whistled while mowing the lawn and burned the pancakes every Sunday just to make me laugh. We'd been married 40 years before the cancer came. He passed on a quiet Tuesday morning with the radio still playing in the background. After that, the silence of the house became unbearable. Every cup, every chair, every photo frame reminded me that I was alone. Then my son Ethan called one evening. His voice was soft, careful, like he was speaking to a fragile thing. "Mom," he said, "you shouldn't be by yourself anymore. It's not good for you. Come stay with us for a while. You'll have company, you'll have Oliver, and Tessa's been asking when we can have you over." I remember smiling through tears. "Oh, Ethan, that sounds wonderful." And it was. At first. When I first moved in, the house was full of light. Tessa greeted me with open arms. "We're so happy you're here," she said, hugging me tightly. Oliver's been counting the days. Oliver came running down the stairs, his little arms flinging around my waist. "Grandma," he shouted, "you can sleep in the room next to mine." That first week was beautiful. Dinners together, laughter echoing down the hall, the smell of roasted chicken and apple pie. Tessa poured me tea every afternoon and asked about Robert, about my teaching days. I thought she was wonderful, a thoughtful, attentive daughter-in-law. She would smile and say things like, "You've done enough, Margaret. Let us take care of you now." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But comfort can hide rot if you don't look too closely. It started small. One morning I found Tessa going through my mail. "Oh," she said, startled, quickly setting it down. "Sorry, I was just checking if there were any bills that needed sorting." "You know how confusing that can get sometimes." I laughed nervously. "Tessa, I can still read a water bill," she smiled sweetly. "Of course you can. I just thought I'd make things easier for you." And I let her. A week later, she offered to handle all my utilities and banking so I wouldn't stress about it. Honestly. "Margaret," she said, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve, "you've done enough paperwork for a lifetime. Just let me help." Her voice was warm, reassuring. And part of me, the lonely, grateful part, wanted to say yes. So I did. She smiled, took the envelopes from my hands, and kissed my cheek. "See? That's better already." That night I told myself it was fine. Families share responsibilities. Maybe I was old-fashioned, overthinking. But then little things began to vanish. My checkbook, my prescription refills, even my reading glasses once, though she swore she'd never seen them. When I mentioned it to Ethan, he brushed it off. "Mom, Tessa's just organized. You know how scattered you can be lately." His words stung more than I expected. Scattered, like I was losing my grip. I forced a smile. "Of course, you're right, because what else could I say? I didn't want to sound ungrateful." One afternoon, I tried calling my friend Dorothy. We'd been meeting for tea every Thursday for years. But my phone wouldn't turn on. The screen stayed black no matter what I pressed. I asked Tessa about it. "Oh, that old thing?" she said. I meant to tell you. It wasn't charging properly, so I'll get you a new one next week. But next week never came. Every time I asked again, she'd smile and say, I haven't had a chance yet. You don't really need it anyway, do you? You have us. And the way she said you have us, it wasn't comforting. It was final. Soon Dorothy stopped visiting too. Then my church friends. Once I overheard Tessa on the phone. Oh yes, she said, laughing lightly. Margaret's fine, but she's been a little forgetful lately. Best to give her some space while she adjusts. Forgetful. That word echoed in my mind like a curse. I remember confronting her once, gently. Tessa, did you tell Dorothy not to come anymore? She raised an eyebrow, pretending to be offended. What? Of course not. Why would you think that? She hasn't returned my calls. She tilted her head, her voice dripping with sympathy. Maybe she's busy. You know, older people can get a little paranoid when they're under stress. Paranoid. Another word. Another tiny cut. I wanted to scream, but instead I apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. She smiled again, touching my shoulder. Don't worry, Margaret. You've been through a lot. Just rest. Every time she said rest, I felt smaller. The house started to feel less like a home and more like a museum. Everything in its place, nothing truly alive. Even Ethan's laughter became rarer. He worked longer hours, came home tired, distracted. When I tried to talk to him about Oliver, he'd sigh and say, Mom, don't start. Tessa's doing her best, but I could see it. The tension in Oliver's eyes. The way he flinched when Tessa raised her voice. The way he lingered near me when she left the room. And yet, I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, because I wanted this life to be good. I needed it to be good. I thought I was lucky, a widow surrounded by family, a warm home, meals cooked for me. But sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in bed and whisper to the darkness, why do I feel like a guest in my own son's house? No answer ever came, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of Oliver's footsteps down the hall. Then one morning, I found my purse locked in the cabinet under the sink. Tessa, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, why is my bag in here? She barely looked up from her coffee. Oh, that? I noticed you left it out again. I just wanted to keep it safe. Safe? From what? She smiled without meeting my eyes. You never know these days. People misplace things. I opened my mouth to protest, but she added sharply, You do trust me, don't you, Margaret? My throat went dry. Of course. Her smile returned instantly. Good. Then don't worry about silly little things. And just like that, the conversation ended, like every other one before it. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the dark trees swaying outside. The wind rattled the glass, and I whispered to myself, You're safe here. You're safe. But deep down, I didn't believe it, because care shouldn't feel like a cage. And every day, the bars were getting harder to ignore. I used to think madness crept in quietly, that it arrived like fog, slow and soft until you couldn't tell where it began. But now I know it doesn't. It's pushed. It's planted. It was Tessa who made me start questioning my own mind. It started with something small. My mother's wedding ring, a gold band with tiny blue stones. I'd worn it every day since Robert died. One morning, I woke up and it was gone. I tore the room apart, pulled open drawers, checked under the bed, even emptied my purse. Nothing. When I asked Tessa, she didn't even look up from her coffee. Oh, that old thing. Are you sure you didn't misplace it? I never take it off, I said. Never, she smiled faintly. Well, you're under a lot of stress, Margaret. Things slip through the cracks. I'm not senile, I snapped before I could stop myself. Her smile froze. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes, something cold and calculating. Then just as quickly, it was gone. I didn't say that, she murmured. But everyone forgets things. It's normal. She reached out, resting her hand over mine. Her nails were painted a soft pink, but her grip was firm, almost too firm. Try to relax, okay? I'll help you look for it later. We never looked. That afternoon, I saw the same ring glinting faintly on her finger as she stirred sugar into her tea. My heart dropped into my stomach. I opened my mouth to speak, but Ethan walked in, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. smiling like everything was perfect. The words died in my throat. From that day on, I started keeping my belongings in a small locked box I hid in my suitcase. I didn't even trust the drawers anymore. But then the bank statements started coming. One evening, while Tessa was out with friends and Ethan was still at work, I noticed an envelope on the counter with my name on it. I wasn't supposed to see it. She usually collected the mail first. When I opened it, my chest tightened. My pension account had 3 months of unusual withdrawals. Thousands of dollars. I remember whispering aloud, "What is this?" Ethan came home later that night, loosening his tie. "Mom, you're still up?" I held up the statement. "Ethan, did you see this? My pension? Money's missing." He frowned. "What do you mean missing?" "I didn't take it. I didn't authorize this." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mom, please." "Maybe you forgot." "Forgot?" My voice cracked. "Ethan, I was a teacher for 26 years. I balanced every budget down to the penny." He looked away. "You've been overwhelmed lately. Losing things, getting mixed up." "That's not true," I said quietly. He didn't answer. That was the first time my own son didn't meet my eyes. When he walked away, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wanted to believe him, that it was just confusion, maybe a bank error. But deep down, something darker whispered, "They're making you doubt yourself on purpose." The next morning, my bank card was gone. I tore the drawers open again, checked every pocket. Nothing. When I asked, Tessa laughed softly. "Oh, I have it. You left it out yesterday, remember? I put it away for safekeeping. Then give it back," I said. She smiled but didn't move. "I'll hold on to it for now. It's safer this way." My voice trembled. "Tessa, it's my account." "Of course it is," she said sweetly. "We're just protecting you. Protecting me." That phrase lodged in my chest like a stone. That night I overheard them, Ethan and Tessa, talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low, urgent. "She's slipping faster than I thought," Tessa said. "Forgetting things, imagining stuff. It's getting worse. Maybe we should look into guardianship," Ethan whispered. "Just until she's stable." My heart stopped. Guardianship. That word echoed like thunder in my skull. They were talking about me, as if I wasn't still standing on my own 2 feet. As if I wasn't right there, alive, listening. I pressed my back against the wall, barely breathing. Tessa's voice softened. "It's for her own good. You know how she gets. One day she'll thank us." Ethan didn't answer for a long time. When he finally did, he sounded broken. "I just don't want her to hate me." Tessa laughed quietly. "She won't even remember." I stumbled back to my room, clutching my chest. The walls felt like they were closing in. My own son, the boy I raised, the child I loved with every heartbeat, was planning to take my life away piece by piece. For days after that, I couldn't eat. I barely spoke. Every sound in that house, the creak of the stairs, the turning of a doorknob, made my heart race. But it wasn't just about me anymore. It was Oliver. He was the only one who looked at me the same way. The only pair of eyes in that house that still held love. One morning, as I made him breakfast, he stared at the floor, his fork untouched. "Not hungry?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "You feeling sick?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Mom says you forget things." I froze. "She said that?" He nodded. "She said sometimes you see things that aren't real." I forced a smile. "Well, that's not true, sweetheart. Grandma's brain still works just fine." He looked up then, and for a moment his lip quivered. "I know." He said it so quietly, I almost didn't hear. Later that day, I heard Tessa scolding him in the living room. Her tone was sharp, almost vicious. "What did I tell you about talking back?" "I didn't. Don't lie to me." There was a sound, not quite a slap, but something hit the table hard. I rushed to the doorway, but she was already kneeling in front of him, smiling sweetly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," she said smoothly, brushing Oliver's hair back. "We were just having a little chat, weren't we, darling?" Oliver didn't look up. After that, she made sure we were never alone together. If I went to his room, she'd find a reason to call him away. If we sat at the table, she'd hover, pretending to clean, pretending not to listen. But late one night, long after everyone had gone to bed, I heard a soft knock at my door. I opened it, and there he was, standing in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with fear. "Oliver? What's wrong?" He looked over his shoulder, then whispered, "Grandma, promise you'll listen when I tell you something later." My heart squeezed. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "Not now," he whispered. "When it's safe." He backed away before I could say another word and disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. I stood there for a long time, hand on the doorknob, staring into the shadows. What could make a child say something like that? I didn't know then, but I would soon. And what I'd learn would change everything. I used to believe betrayal came in shouts and slammed doors, that it looked like anger, loud and obvious. But that morning, when I woke up and reached for my bedroom door, betrayal sounded like a click, a cold, metallic click. The handle wouldn't move. At first, I thought it was jammed. I twisted harder, rattled it, pushed my shoulder against the wood. Nothing. The sound echoed through the quiet hallway beyond. "Tessa?" I called. "Oliver?" No answer. I pressed my ear to the door. I could hear footsteps downstairs, soft, measured, then the faint sound of a kettle boiling. My stomach turned. When Tessa finally came up, she was humming. She stopped at my door like she'd been expecting me to call. "Good morning," she said brightly. "Tessa, the door's locked." "Yes." "Yes?" I repeated, stunned. She sighed, as though I'd just asked something terribly inconvenient. "You've been wandering at night again." "It's dangerous, Margaret. I can't have you hurting yourself." "Wandering?" I froze. "That's not true." "Ethan told me you tried to go outside last night." "In your nightgown." "What?" "That's a lie!" Her voice didn't change. "Oliver saw you. He was frightened. I didn't leave this room." Tessa's smile didn't falter, but her tone sharpened. "I'm doing this for your safety. You'll thank me one day." I banged on the door. "Open it, Tessa, right now." "I'll bring you breakfast," she said sweetly. "Let's calm down first." Then I heard the soft click of her heels fading down the stairs. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The walls felt closer, the air thinner. For the first time, I realized I wasn't living with them anymore. I was kept. When she finally unlocked the door an hour later, I tried to compose myself. "Morning," she said cheerfully, carrying a tray. "Scrambled eggs, your favorite." "I don't want breakfast," I said quietly. "I want to talk to my son." She smiled, placing the tray on the nightstand. "He's busy with work, Margaret. He doesn't need to be dragged into every little issue. Locking me in isn't a little issue." Her hand tightened on the tray. "You're confused," she said, her tone still honey-sweet but her eyes glinting. "Why don't we have breakfast downstairs, Fresh air will help." When we sat at the table, Ethan was already there. His face looked pale, tired. He didn't look up when I entered. "Ethan," I began, trying to steady my voice. "Did you know she locked my door?" He sighed. "Mom, please don't make this harder." "Harder?" I whispered. "She locked me in, Ethan, like a prisoner." He rubbed his temple. "You've been restless at night, Mom. Tessa's worried you'll fall or wander outside." "That's nonsense. You know me better than that." He looked away, his silence louder than words. That's when Tessa slid a stack of papers across the table. "Speaking of safety," she said smoothly, "we need to handle some paperwork today." I glanced down. "What is this?" "Just some financial adjustments," she said, pouring coffee. "Power of attorney. It lets me handle your bank accounts and bills. Nothing changes day to day, I promise. It's just easier for all of us." I stared at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. "Why would you need that?" "Because you've been forgetting things," she said gently. "And I don't want anything important getting missed." Ethan cleared his throat. "It's just a formality, Mom." "No," I said slowly. "No, I don't think I should." Tessa leaned forward, smiling tightly. "You do trust us, don't you?" My pulse quickened. "Of course I do, but—" "Then there's nothing to worry about." She pushed a pen into my hand. Ethan murmured, "Mom!" "Please." And I saw it, that flicker of guilt in his eyes, that tiny flash of something dying inside him as he looked away. "I don't understand all of this," I whispered. "I'll explain it later," Tessa said quickly. "It's just standard procedure." I hesitated. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Tessa's tone softened again. You've been through so much lately. You shouldn't have to stress about money. Let us take care of you." The words "take care" made my stomach twist, but Ethan's voice came next, low and pleading. "Mom, please, just sign it. It'll make things easier." My hands trembled as I looked between them, my son and the woman whose smile never reached her eyes. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe this was love, not control, so I signed. The pen scraped across the paper, a sound that still echoes in my head. Tessa smiled like she'd just won a game. "Perfect. I'll handle the rest." Then she gathered the papers, folded them neatly, and placed them into her leather folder. For the rest of the day, she was humming again. The sound trailed her like perfume, light and false. Hours later, I sat in my room, staring at the sunlight crawling across the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Something inside me whispered that I'd just done something irreversible. When I asked to see the document again, Tessa waved me off. "I've already filed it," she said lightly. "Don't you worry your head about it." I went to Ethan's study that evening. He was typing, eyes on the screen. "Ethan," I said softly, "do you know what that paper was? Did you read it?" He hesitated. "Mom, it's fine. It's just legal stuff. Did you read it?" I repeated. He finally turned to face me, eyes tired, almost empty. "Yes, it gives Tessa authority to manage your affairs." "Authority?" "Temporarily," he said quickly. "It's just to help." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You mean she can access everything? My accounts, my property?" "Mom, calm down. I trusted you." My voice cracked. "You told me it was nothing." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's for your protection. You're not thinking clearly anymore. Don't you dare say that." He flinched, but didn't take it back. I turned away before he could see me cry. That night, I sat by the window again, the stars sharp and cold above the trees. My reflection stared back, older, smaller, frightened. I whispered to myself, I used to teach children to read truth between lines. But I couldn't see the lie sitting right across from me. The next morning, I found my jewelry box empty, every piece gone. When I confronted Tessa, she smiled sweetly and said, "We're reorganizing. I'll return everything once it's properly insured." "Insured?" I echoed, her voice softened. "Margaret, please. You're making me feel like a thief." I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew what she was. The days blurred after that. Locked doors, cold dinners, whispers in rooms that fell silent when I entered, and through it all, Oliver watched, quiet, frightened, always listening. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen pretending to read a magazine, I caught him staring at me. His eyes were wide, his hands trembling. I smiled gently. "It's okay, sweetheart." He looked at the hallway, then slipped something from his pocket, a crumpled piece of paper, and pressed it into my palm before running off. I didn't open it until he was gone. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. "Leave now." Mom is dangerous. My heart stopped. I looked up, and there she was, standing in the doorway, that same cold smile curling on her lips. "What are you reading, Margaret?" she asked softly, the same moment I'd lived before. The same fear creeping through my veins, and when she reached for the paper, I knew what would come next, the match, the sink, the hiss of burning paper. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it was total. I wasn't just living in that house, I was trapped in it. For days after that night, the house felt like a cage built from silence. Every sound made me flinch, a closing drawer, footsteps in the hallway, the faint creak of my door. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Tessa's face lit by the flame as she burned Oliver's note. Her lips curving into that quiet, knowing smile. That was when something inside me shifted. I stopped asking questions. I stopped pleading. Instead, I started watching. It began one afternoon while I was folding Oliver's laundry. He'd been unusually quiet all week. No more visits to my room, no whispered secrets. I found his sketchbook under a pile of shirts, half hidden like he didn't want anyone to see it. Curiosity tugged at me. I opened it. The first few pages were simple: stick figures, messy coloring, bright crayon suns. Then I turned the page and froze. There was a drawing of our kitchen. The table, the chairs, the window, but in the center there was a woman with black scribbles for hair and an angry red mouth. She was shouting at a smaller figure. The smaller figure was me, and in the corner, written in a shaky scrawl, were the words, "Grandma scared." I kept turning the pages, my hands trembling. In another drawing, Tessa stood outside my bedroom door holding a key. In the next, I was behind the door crying. And beneath that, "Don't tell." I covered my mouth. The room tilted. That was the moment I stopped wondering if I was losing my mind. No, I was seeing things exactly as they were. Tessa wasn't protecting me. She was erasing me piece by piece, my freedom, my dignity, even my sanity. And my sweet Oliver. He'd seen it all. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the dark window. The reflection looking back at me wasn't the same woman who'd moved in out of love for her son. It was someone older, colder, and very, very awake. I whispered to myself, "They think age makes me blind. But I've been watching people all my life. This time, I'll make them see." From that moment, I began my quiet war. It started small. Each morning, Tessa brought me my vitamins. She'd place the pills beside my tea and say, "Take these, Margaret." Doctor's orders. I started pretending to swallow them. I'd sip water, smile, and wait for her to leave. Then I'd slip the pills into a napkin, fold it carefully, and hide it behind the wardrobe. Days later, when she wasn't home, I compared them to the ones I'd been prescribed. Different color, different markings. She was drugging me. The realization hit like ice water. I sat on the floor shaking, the napkin still open in my hands. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took notes. I found an old notebook from my teaching days and began to write dates, times, every strange thing I noticed. March 12th, jewelry still missing. Tessa says she'll check the insurance box. March 13th, phone calls to someone named Mr. Langley. Heard the words. She won't remember anyway. March 14th, medication color changed again. Every line felt like reclaiming a little of myself. One morning, I woke up early, before Tessa could lock the door. I crept down the stairs, the floorboards moaning beneath my feet. The house was still, filled with the faint hum of the refrigerator. From the hallway, I could hear her voice, low and sharp. She was on the phone. "No, not yet," she whispered. "The paperwork's done, but I need the account cleared first." She still asks questions. Pause. "Yes, I know it's risky, but Ethan won't stop me. He's too soft." My blood ran cold. She laughed then. A brittle, chilling laugh I'd never heard before. "By the time anyone realizes, she'll be in assisted living. I'll have power of attorney and the house deed." I backed away, my breath trembling in my chest. My heel hit a loose floorboard. It squeaked. The sound was tiny, but her voice stopped. "Hello?" she called out. I darted up the stairs, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. By the time she appeared at the landing, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. "Margaret?" she said softly. I kept my breathing slow and even. After a moment, she shut the door, and that was the moment I knew she wouldn't stop until I was powerless. That afternoon, I sat in my room, staring at the sunlight stretching across the carpet. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel afraid. I felt focused. I whispered, "You want to erase me, Tessa? Then you'll have to work harder." I decided I would document everything. I set my old wristwatch to beep quietly every hour, a reminder to write down what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. And soon, I realized something even darker. Ethan knew. He wasn't blind, just broken. Each time I caught his eyes, guilt flickered there. That evening, I tried once more. "Ethan," I said softly as he came home from work. "Can we talk? Just the two of us?" Tessa appeared from the kitchen almost immediately. "Oh, don't tire him, Margaret. He's had a long day," but Ethan hesitated. "It's okay. What is it, Mom?" I looked straight at him. "I found Oliver's drawings," he froze. "Drawings?" "Yes," I said slowly. "He's afraid, Ethan, of her. Of what's happening in this house." Tessa's tone turned sharp. That's ridiculous, I ignored her. He sees what you won't. Mom, please, Ethan's voice cracked. Do you really believe I'm losing my mind? After everything? He looked at the floor, hands shaking. I don't know what to believe anymore. Tessa stepped closer to him, touching his arm. Don't let her manipulate you, Ethan. You know she's not well. I could see her whispering poison in real time, wrapping it around his doubt like silk. Something inside me hardened. I stopped talking, because talking was useless. It was time to act. That night, when everyone was asleep, I tiptoed to my sewing box, the one no one ever touched. Inside, beneath the folded cloth, I placed a small black object, a voice recorder. It had been sitting unused for years, a relic from when I recorded lessons for my students. I checked the batteries, still working. My hands trembled as I whispered, "Let's see who's losing their mind now." I pressed record. The red light blinked once. Quiet, steady, alive. I hid it beneath the layers of fabric, leaving just a sliver of air so it could catch the sounds. The next morning, I acted normal. Tessa brought breakfast, the same too sweet smile, the same clinking tray. "How are we feeling today?" she asked. I smiled back. "Better, much better." "Good. I knew the vitamins would help." She laughed, not noticing my hands were steady again. I let her talk. Every word, every cruel little lie was being captured, the start of my silent counterattack. That night, as I sat by the window, I thought of Oliver's drawings again. The red mouth, the key, the tears. I traced the lines in my mind and whispered, "I won't let her win." Outside, the wind brushed against the glass, almost like a promise. I picked up my pen and wrote the final line for the night in my notebook. Tomorrow, I begin collecting proof. Then I turned off the lamp. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. I used to think rebellion meant shouting, standing tall, demanding justice. But I learned that real rebellion can whisper. It can hide in quiet corners, in secret phone calls, in pills slipped behind picture frames, and for me, it began with a phone. Tessa had started locking the house phone in her office drawer, saying it was too confusing for me lately. But one afternoon, when she left to pick up groceries, I noticed her purse on the counter, her cell phone inside, buzzing faintly. I hesitated. My heart hammered like a trapped bird. If she caught me. But then I thought of Oliver, of his drawings, of the key in Tessa's hand. So I did it. I grabbed her phone, slipped into the laundry room, and dialed the only number I still remembered by heart, my neighbor, Linda. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret, is that you? I haven't heard from you in ages." Her voice nearly broke me. "Linda," I whispered. "Listen carefully. Don't call back this number, please. I need to borrow your phone tomorrow." There was a pause. "Is everything all right?" I swallowed hard. "No, but I can't explain now. Just meet me by the mailbox at 10. She agreed, confusion and concern tangled in her tone. Before I could say thank you, I heard a car pulling into the driveway. I hung up, shoved the phone back, and forced myself to breathe evenly. When Tessa came in with shopping bags, she glanced at me, smiling. "Been keeping yourself busy, Margaret?" I smiled back. "Always." My hands were still trembling. The next morning, I told Tessa I wanted to get some fresh air. She eyed me suspiciously, but said nothing. When I reached the mailbox, Linda was already there, her brow furrowed. "Margaret, you look pale. What's going on?" I glanced toward the house, Tessa's shadow moving past the curtains. I lowered my voice. "I need to call my bank." She handed me her phone without a word. My hands shook as I dialed. When the woman on the line asked for my security information, my voice quivered but steady enough to pass. "Can you tell me the recent transactions on my account?" I asked, a pause. Then she read them out. Large withdrawals, thousands. Transfers I'd never authorized, and then the final blow. "Your account was linked to a new joint holder last month, a Mrs. Tessa Reynolds." My heart stopped. When I hung up, Linda asked softly, "What did she do?" I looked at her, eyes burning. She took everything. That night, I hid my real medication under the floorboard behind my bed and replaced the pills in the bottle with the ones Tessa gave me. If she noticed, she'd think I was still obedient, still forgetful, still hers to control, but she noticed something else instead. My calm. It unnerved her. I caught her watching me, her smile tighter than usual. "You seem different lately," she said one evening. Almost confident, I stirred my soup. "Maybe I'm just getting used to things." Her lips twitched. "That's good. We wouldn't want another—" Outburst. I looked up. "Outburst?" She smiled sweetly. "You don't remember? The other day when you tried to hit me, my spoon froze midair." "What? Oh, it's okay." "I understand," she said softly. "Sometimes your mind plays tricks." Ethan, who was sitting across the table, looked startled. "Mom, you did that?" Tessa interrupted quickly. "It's fine, Ethan. I know she didn't mean it." Her voice dripped with fake concern. I could see him trying to make sense of it, his face twisting with guilt and confusion. I wanted to scream, to tell him the truth. But I saw the way he looked at me, uncertain, hesitant. I realized then, she'd already been poisoning him too. The following days blurred together. Meals went cold, doors locked earlier, whispers followed me wherever I went. Once, as I reached for a cup, Tessa brushed past me accidentally, knocking it to the floor. "Oh, Margaret, be careful," she said with mock sympathy. "You're so clumsy lately." I could see the satisfaction behind her smile. Another time, I found my knitting needles bent, my clothes missing from the laundry. Each act was small, deliberate, meant to remind me that she controlled every inch of my life. But I refused to break. I wrote everything down. Every bruise, every lie, every cruel little accident. One afternoon, a new face appeared at the door, a woman in scrubs, holding a clipboard. "Hi there," she said kindly. "I'm Clara, the visiting nurse. Just a quick checkup for your blood pressure." Tessa appeared behind her, all charm and warmth. "Of course. Margaret's been a bit forgetful lately, so I asked for help." I wanted to laugh at the irony. Clara followed me to my room, her tone professional but gentle. "You doing all right, Mrs. Reynolds?" I nodded. "Fine, thank you." As she took my pulse, she noticed a faint bruise on my wrist. Her eyes lingered on it a little too long. "Did you fall?" she asked softly. Before I could answer, Tessa called from the hallway. "Everything okay in there?" Clara smiled faintly and raised her voice. "All fine." Then quieter, she said to me, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here every Wednesday." Her eyes met mine, steady, knowing. When she left, she shook my hand. Something small and smooth pressed into my palm. After she was gone, I opened my hand. It was a business card, Clara Morales, Intern Community Health Support. On the back, she'd written, "Call me if you need help." That night, I sat on my bed, staring at that card. It felt like holding sunlight, fragile, warm, impossible to let go. I slipped it beneath my pillow, clutching it like a prayer. For weeks, I'd felt invisible, powerless, old. But now, someone saw me, someone believed me, and in that moment, I whispered to myself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." The hallway light flickered outside my door. I heard Tessa's footsteps pause, the faint rattle of the lock. Then silence. I gripped Clara's card tighter. No more fear. No more waiting. If Tessa wanted to break me, she'd have to fight harder than this, because now I wasn't alone anymore. I used to think the worst kind of prison was made of stone and bars. But I was wrong. The worst kind is built out of silence. After Clara's visit, Tessa changed. She started smiling more, that dangerous kind of smile, thin and sharp. And suddenly, everything I did became a concern. If I left the stove on for a moment, she'd sigh. "Oh, Margaret, you're forgetting again." If I asked about my bank account, she'd touch my hand gently. "Don't stress yourself, darling. Let me handle that." But beneath her sweetness, I saw something else. Panic. She knew I wasn't as helpless as she wanted me to be. And that scared her. One morning, she announced, "You have a doctor's appointment on Friday." I frowned. "For what?" "Just a little evaluation," she said lightly. "Routine check, to make sure you're doing well." Her tone made my skin crawl. When I asked which doctor, she said, "A specialist." Someone who understands people like you. People like me? You'll see. That night, I overheard her whispering on the phone. Her voice was low but urgent. Yes, she's been confused again. Forgetting things, accusing me of awful stuff. Yes, please write that down. My chest tightened. She was building a case, a record of lies. Friday came too soon. The doctor, a man in his 60s with silver hair, greeted me with forced cheerfulness. So, Margaret, Tessa tells me you've been a bit forgetful lately. I've been fine, I said firmly. He smiled, writing something down. Fine, okay. And what year is it? I hesitated, not because I didn't know, but because I was stunned. It's 2023, I said slowly. He nodded, scribbling again. And the president? I felt heat rising in my face. Is this really necessary? Just procedure, he said. Now, can you recall 3 words for me? Apple, table, penny. I repeated them. Minutes later, after a barrage of meaningless questions, he leaned back, smiling at Tessa. Well, nothing alarming, he said. But there are definite signs of cognitive decline. I'd recommend continued supervision. Tessa pressed her hand to her chest, feigning concern. Oh, I just want what's best for her. I looked at her and saw triumph flicker behind her eyes. That night, I found my pill bottles had been rearranged. The labels looked the same. But the pills inside, they weren't. Some were larger, others a different color. When I asked her about it, she frowned. You must be mixing them up again. I didn't touch them. Well, maybe Oliver did. Oliver's at school. Her voice sharpened. Stop shouting at me, Margaret. You're scaring me, I froze. The way she said it, loud enough for Ethan, who was walking past, to hear. He stepped into the kitchen. Mom, what's going on? Tessa turned to him, eyes glassy with fake tears. She's been getting worse. I don't know what to do anymore. I reached out. Ethan, don't listen. Enough! He snapped, his voice breaking. Just stop. The words hit harder than a slap. He didn't even look at me. He just walked away. And in that silence, something inside me cracked. Days bled together. The walls of the house seemed smaller. The air heavier. Even the clocks ticked louder, mocking me. Every word I spoke turned into ammunition. If I asked for space, she's paranoid. If I questioned her cooking, she's delusional. If I raised my voice, she's dangerous. It was a slow erasure, not of my body, but of my mind. One morning, I reached for my diary, the one where I'd written everything. The dates, the bruises, the phone calls, but when I opened it, the pages were torn out, every last one. Only one remained, the first page. And written across it, in my own shaky handwriting, were the words, maybe I'm losing my mind, except... I didn't write that. I felt the world tilt around me. I stumbled into the hallway, shouting, Tessa! Where are my pages? She appeared at the top of the stairs, calm as ever. Pages? What are you talking about? My diary. You took them. She laughed softly. Margaret, you shouldn't accuse people like that. It makes you sound unstable. I wanted to throw something, to scream until she broke, but I stopped myself. Because that's what she wanted, proof of my instability. So I bit my tongue and smiled. You're right, I said quietly. Must have misplaced them. And that smile, that tiny defiance, made her eyes narrow. 2 days later, Clara showed up unannounced. Tessa tried to block her at the door. You weren't scheduled this week. Clara smiled politely. Just a quick follow-up. Won't take long. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes, cold steel. Tessa hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course. Clara followed me into my room and shut the door. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What's going on here? I hesitated. The words tangled in my throat. Tessa's! I stopped, tears burning behind my eyes. She's trying to erase me, Clara frowned. Erase you? She's changing my pills. She made a doctor say I'm losing my mind. She took my diary. She's turning Ethan against me. For a long moment, Clara said nothing. She just looked at me. Really looked. Then she whispered, I believe you. Those 3 words almost broke me. She sat beside me, her hand on mine. But if we're going to stop her, we need proof. Real evidence, something undeniable. I had it, I said bitterly. She destroyed it. Then we'll make new proof, Clara said. But you need to be careful. She's watching everything, I nodded, feeling hope stir again. I've already started recording her. Good, Clara said. Keep doing that. I'll speak to social services, but it has to look official, like a checkup, not a rescue. Before I could thank her, there was a sharp knock on the door. Tessa's voice. Sweet, sharp, venomous. Everything all right in there? Clara stood smoothing her uniform. Just finishing up, she called. But when she opened the door, Tessa was standing there, eyes cold. Funny, Tessa said softly. I could have sworn I heard whispering, Clara smiled. Just patient confidentiality. Tessa stepped closer, invading her space. Be careful, nurse. Sometimes people misunderstand what they see. Her words were sugar-coated poison. Clara didn't flinch. Sometimes they do, she said evenly. The two women stared at each other, a silent war in the air between them. Then Tessa smiled. Well, I'll walk you out. Clara turned back to me, her voice low but firm. I'll be back soon, Margaret. Hold on. And just like that, she was gone. That night, Tessa was quieter than usual. She didn't speak at dinner, didn't make small talk, but when she passed me a glass of water, her fingers brushed mine, and she leaned in. Whispering, I know what you're doing. My stomach dropped. She straightened, smiling sweetly at Ethan. Could you get your grandma's sweater from the couch, honey? He got up. Then she leaned in again, her voice low enough for only me to hear. You think that nurse will save you? She hissed. I'll make sure she never comes back. And then, louder, cheerful again, Eat up, Margaret! You need your strength. I stared at her, trying not to shake. Inside, panic clawed at my ribs. But beneath it, something else was growing. Rage, not the wild, helpless kind, but cold, deliberate, patient rage, the kind that waits for the right moment to strike. That night as I lay in bed, the house groaned with wind and silence. I could hear her footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, circling like a predator testing its cage, and I whispered to myself, You can watch me all you want, Tessa, but I'm watching you too. Because I knew the storm had started, and this time, I wasn't the one who'd break. I used to think heartbreak had a sound, like glass shattering or doors slamming. But that morning, heartbreak sounded like my son's voice, calm, polite, and rehearsed. Mom, Ethan said, standing in the kitchen doorway, we need to talk. Something in his tone made my hands go cold. I was at the table, folding laundry, pretending not to notice Tessa hovering behind him, her arms folded, eyes gleaming. What is it? I asked carefully. Ethan looked at Tessa, then back at me. It's about the guardianship, I froze. What guardianship? Tessa spoke first. Ethan and I talked to the lawyer. Given your recent incidents, it's time we consider formal guardianship. Just until things stabilize. Incidents? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Mom, please don't make this harder. I'm asking what incidents. Tessa lowered her voice like she was trying to protect me from the truth. You left Oliver at the park last week. You walked home alone and didn't even realize he wasn't with you. What? My heart stopped. That's not true. Tessa tilted her head. Mrs. Hill saw you. She said you looked confused. Confused? I snapped. I wasn't confused. You told Oliver to stay in the car that day while I went to the pharmacy. Ethan's eyes flickered, a moment of doubt, but Tessa cut in. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but your mother's memory has been slipping for months. I slammed my palm on the table. Stop saying that. Ethan stepped back, startled. Tessa, ever the performer, gasped softly and clutched her chest. See? This is what I mean. Ethan, I said, pleading, you know me. You know I'd never forget your son. Never. He looked at me, really looked, and for a second I saw my boy again. The boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and tears, trusting me to fix everything. But that second was gone as quickly as it came. Mom, he said quietly, maybe Tessa's right. Maybe we just need to make sure you're safe. Safe. That word felt like a blade twisting between my ribs. I don't need to be safe from myself, I whispered. He sighed and turned away. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Tessa placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her eyes never leaving mine. Good idea. Let's give her time to rest. Her smile said it all. She'd won this round. That night, the house felt different, quieter, heavier. I sat by my window staring into the darkness, my mind replaying every word. Guardianship, incidents, confused, each one chipped away at me, like little stones thrown at a window until the glass spider-webbed with cracks. Ethan believed her. My own son. I whispered to myself, you can't let her break you. But my voice sounded foreign, weak, like it belonged to someone else. That's when Tessa walked in, carrying a cup of tea. Chamomile, she said sweetly. You've had a long day, I hesitated. Her smile didn't falter. Go on. You need to sleep. I wanted to refuse, but my hands were trembling, and I didn't want her to see the fear. So I took it. The tea was warm, almost too sweet. Tessa lingered by the doorway, watching me sip. You know, she said softly, Ethan doesn't want to do this. It's tearing him apart. I swallowed hard. Then tell him the truth. Her smile faded into something colder. The truth, she said slowly, is what people choose to believe. And then she left. I don't remember falling asleep. Only the heaviness, like my limbs were sinking into the mattress, my eyelids too heavy to lift. When I woke, the world was spinning. My head throbbed. My tongue felt thick. The sunlight stabbed through the curtains, too bright, too sharp. I tried to sit up, but my arms trembled. Something was wrong. The clock said 10:47 a.m. I'd never slept that late in my life. When I finally steadied myself, I noticed my sewing box on the dresser, slightly open. My heart stuttered. I dragged myself across the room, every step like wading through syrup. Inside the box, empty space. My recorder was gone. I stumbled to the drawer under my nightstand. My notebook, the one I'd started after Clara's warning, was missing too. Gone. Every note, every recording, every shred of proof I'd gathered. They'd taken it. The room tilted. I clutched the dresser, gasping. Downstairs I heard laughter, Tessa's light and airy, Ethan's tired but compliant, and suddenly I understood. That tea, that kindness. It wasn't care. It was control. I'd been drugged. I sank to the floor, my back against the dresser. Hopelessness washed over me, thick and suffocating. They'd taken my words, my proof, even my name. I'd spent a lifetime being Margaret, the teacher, the mother, the woman who held families together. Now I was just the patient, the problem, the liability. Pressed my palms against my face and felt tears, hot and shaking, spill through my fingers. And then something crinkled beneath my hand. A tiny folded paper, Oliver's note, the one he'd slipped into my palm weeks ago, the night everything changed. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. The pencil marks were smudged, but I could still read the words, Grandma, don't give up. I'll help you. For a long time, I just stared at those words. The handwriting was uneven, the letters shaky, but it was real. Proof that someone still saw me, someone still believed me, and somehow, that was enough to keep me breathing. That night, I lay in bed, pretending to sleep as Tessa checked on me. She whispered something to Ethan in the hallway. She's calmer now. I think the medication's helping. Medication. I closed my eyes tighter, forcing my breathing to stay steady. When they left, I whispered into the dark, my voice barely a breath. You can take my proof, but you'll never take my truth. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying Oliver's promise in my mind, a small, trembling light in a house built of shadows. And I held on to that light, because it was all I had left. The morning after they took everything from me, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the blank space where my notebook used to be. My hand kept twitching toward the drawer as if my memories might still be hiding there. But they were gone. My words, my proof, my voice. For days, I drifted like a ghost through the house. I spoke little, ate less. The light in my eyes dimmed, until Clara came back. It was a gray afternoon when I heard a knock at the back door, soft, cautious, like someone afraid of being caught. Margaret? It's me, Clara, I froze. Then, for the first time in weeks, my heart beat faster with something that wasn't fear. I opened the door a crack. Clara, what are you doing here? You're not scheduled. I know, she said, slipping in and closing it behind her. I told them I left my clipboard last time. I don't have long. Her eyes darted around, scanning the kitchen like a soldier checking for landmines. Tessa's at Oliver's school, I whispered. Ethan's probably at work. Good, she lowered her voice. Margaret, I know something's wrong. Last week when I was here, your blood pressure meds were switched. The labels looked off. I didn't say anything then, but I've been thinking about it ever since. I sank into a chair, the weight of her words almost unbearable. They took my notebook, the recorder, everything. I have nothing left. Clara reached across the table, her voice firm. Then we start over. Her certainty hit me like oxygen. Start over? Yes, from scratch. We'll build your case again, but this time... She paused, her eyes glinting with resolve. We'll make sure they can't touch it. That was the moment something in me shifted. The fog began to lift, and beneath the despair, a sharper instinct woke up. I nodded slowly. Tell me what to do. The next few days became our secret war. Clara visited under excuses, follow-ups, lab result clarifications, routine checks. Each time, she brought small tools, a new recorder, a set of blank labels, even a tiny camera disguised as a photo frame. We set it up in the living room, facing the couch where Tessa usually berated me. The lens was invisible unless you knew where to look. I asked softly, Will it really work? Clara smiled faintly. It records both video and sound. The footage uploads to a secure cloud. Even if they find it, they can't erase what's already there. My pulse fluttered. Then, maybe they won't win after all. She placed a hand on my shoulder. They won't, but you need to be careful, Margaret. Pretend nothing's changed. Let them believe you're still weak. I met her eyes, steady this time. I've been playing that part my whole life. That night, I tested my first move. When Tessa brought my dinner, cold soup as usual, she smirked. Try not to spill this one, okay? I lifted the spoon slowly, meeting her gaze. Of course, dear. I wouldn't want to waste your effort. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. But I smiled, just enough to unnerve her. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. Later, I slipped into Oliver's room. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, building a small Lego tower. He looked up and whispered, Grandma? I knelt beside him. Sweetheart, remember the notes you used to bring me? Do you think you could do that again? But this time, help me with something very important. His eyes widened. Like a mission? Yes, I said, smiling softly. A secret mission. You'll be my little messenger, he giggled, lowering his voice dramatically. Operation Grandma Spy. I pressed a finger to my lips. Exactly. Over the next week, Oliver became my lifeline. When Tessa went upstairs, he'd tiptoe into my room, slip a folded paper beneath my pillow, or hand me something tiny, like a pill bottle Clara wanted checked. Once, he whispered, Mom said you're confused again. But I don't think you are. My throat tightened. You're very smart, Oliver, but you can't tell her about this, okay? He nodded solemnly. Secret mission. I promise. As the days passed, I learned to play my part flawlessly. I'd mutter to myself when Tessa was near, just enough for her to think the confusion was getting worse. When Ethan visited, I'd stumble slightly. Speak softly. Let Tessa paint her story. But inside, I was recording everything. One evening, as Tessa handed me my pills, I asked casually, You switched my medication recently, didn't you? I think the bottles look different. She froze for a split second before smiling sweetly. Oh, Mom, don't be silly. You probably just forgot. That happens, right? My recorder, hidden under my sleeve, caught every word. Clara and I reviewed the audio later in secret. Perfect, she whispered, pressing her earphones tighter. That's manipulation on record. We cataloged everything, each insult, each lie, each tampered bottle. But it still wasn't enough for legal action. Not yet. We needed proof of financial exploitation. the kind that couldn't be brushed off as a family misunderstanding. Then one morning, Clara burst through the door earlier than usual, her face pale but electric. "Margaret," she said, breathless. "You won't believe this." My heart skipped. "What is it?" She set her tablet on the table, scrolling quickly. "Remember how you told me Tessa handled your banking because you couldn't remember passwords anymore?" I nodded. Yes, she insisted it was safer that way. Clara turned the screen toward me. "I ran a public inquiry through a contact of mine, just enough to see recent movements. There are transfers, big ones, from your account to hers, monthly. The signatures match yours, but look," she zoomed in. My name, Margaret Haywood, was written in shaky, uneven strokes. It wasn't my hand, my breath caught. She forged them. Exactly. Thousands of dollars. I can't access full records without authorization, but this alone is evidence of fraud. For a moment, the room spun. All the humiliation, the manipulation. It wasn't just cruelty. It was theft, I whispered, trembling. She was stealing from me while telling everyone I was losing my mind. Clara nodded grimly. "We can build a case with this. I'll help you file, but you need to stay calm until we gather enough." I sat back, the weight of months finally shifting. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim, I was a witness. I was no longer their prisoner, I murmured. "I was their witness," Clara's eyes softened. "That's the spirit, Margaret." I gripped the edge of the table, my voice steady now. "Then let's finish this, whatever it takes." Outside, I could hear Tessa's car pulling into the driveway. The sound no longer froze me. It steadied me. Clara quickly hid her tablet and whispered, "Remember, play your part." I nodded, tucking my trembling hands beneath the table just as the door swung open. "Mom," Tessa called, setting down grocery bags. "Talking to yourself again?" I smiled faintly, glancing at the picture frame on the shelf, the one that now held more than just a photo. "No, dear," I said softly. "Just remembering." And the camera recorded it all. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant, like every memory I wanted to forget. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands trembling in my lap, while the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My heart wasn't just beating. It was pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Across the room sat Tessa, flawless as ever. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect poison. She wore a soft gray dress, like she'd dressed for mourning. Only the person she was burying was still alive. Beside her was Ethan, my son, his expression carved from stone. He hadn't looked at me once since we arrived. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My knees nearly buckled. "Please be seated," the judge said, flipping through the file. "Case of guardianship petition, Haywood versus Haywood." That was me. That was my name on trial. Tessa leaned toward her lawyer, whispering something that made her smile widen. I caught a faint whiff of her perfume, the same one she wore the day she first called me Mom. It made me want to be sick. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Haywood," he began, turning to Tessa, "you're petitioning for legal guardianship over your mother-in-law, claiming she's mentally incompetent. Correct?" Tessa folded her hands neatly, every movement calculated. "Yes, Your Honor. It breaks my heart to do this, but Margaret has become unpredictable. She forgets things. She confuses reality with fantasy. Last month, she even left my son alone at the park," I gasped. "That's not true." The judge raised a hand. "You'll have your turn, Mrs. Haywood." Tessa's lawyer continued smoothly. "We have documented evidence of cognitive decline, prescription mismanagement, and a recent incident involving misplaced medication that nearly caused harm." Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper. Misplaced medication? She had switched the labels herself. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palm just to keep from crying out. When it was my turn, my lawyer, a kind but cautious man Clara had recommended, leaned toward me and whispered, "Stay calm. Just tell the truth. We'll handle the rest." I nodded, but the air felt too heavy to breathe. Tessa's voice dripped with sincerity. "We all love Margaret," she said to the courtroom. "But love isn't enough when someone becomes a danger to themselves. My husband and I have only wanted to protect her." She even sniffled, as if tears were just out of reach. I stared at her, stunned. That woman could lie like she was breathing. Then the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Haywood, you may respond." My mouth went dry. "Your Honor," I began softly, "my mind isn't what they say it is, but it has been under siege." Tessa laughed lightly, a brittle, mocking sound. "She's confused again." I looked at Ethan then, hoping for something, a glance, a flicker of belief. Nothing. My voice shook. "They've been manipulating me, changing my medicine, controlling who I speak to, taking my money," Tessa's lawyer cut in. "Objection! Unfounded accusations." The judge waved it off. "Let her finish." I took a deep breath, my words tumbling out. "They told everyone I was losing my mind, but it was them. They were driving me toward it." Tessa tilted her head, eyes soft with false pity. "See what I mean, Your Honor? Paranoia. Classic symptom." The courtroom blurred for a moment, the faces, the whispers, all merging into one suffocating wall of disbelief. I could feel it slipping, my case, my sanity, my chance. Then the back doors creaked open. A figure stepped inside, calm, steady, purposeful. Clara. She walked down the aisle like a silent storm, a folder clutched in her hands. The judge frowned. "And you are?" "Clara Jennings, Your Honor," she said clearly. "I'm a registered nurse assigned to Mrs. Haywood's home for care visits. I have evidence regarding her condition and the conduct of those around her." The courtroom stirred. Even Tessa's composure faltered for a heartbeat. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Clara placed the folder on the evidence table and pulled out a small tablet. "With the court's permission, I'd like to play a recording." Tessa stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Sit down." "Mrs. Haywood," the judge snapped. Clara pressed play. The speakers crackled. Then came the voice I'd tried so long to endure, Tessa's voice. "You think anyone believes you, you senile old witch? You can't even remember what day it is." Then a pause, the faint sound of a sob, my sob. "Please, Tessa, I haven't done anything wrong." "Wrong? You exist, that's wrong enough." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The sound echoed off the walls like a confession from hell itself. Tessa's face went white, Ethan's jaw slackened. He looked between us, confusion, horror, disbelief, all colliding behind his eyes. The judge leaned forward, his voice grave. "Is this authentic?" Clara nodded firmly. "Yes, Your Honor, recorded within the Haywood residence 2 weeks ago." The lawyer stammered, "It could be fabricated." But Clara was ready. She pulled out printed timestamps and verification logs. "These recordings are time-stamped, uploaded automatically to a cloud server. I also have copies of altered medication labels and photographic proof of financial documents showing unauthorized transfers from Mrs. Haywood's account to Tessa Haywood's." The judge's pen stilled midair. "Fraudulent transfers?" Clara nodded. "Multiple, sir. Thousands of dollars." The silence that followed was suffocating. Tessa's lawyer whispered frantically, "Do not speak!" But Tessa was unraveling. "She's lying," she shouted, standing. "That old woman's been poisoning Ethan against me for years." She's manipulating everyone." The judge slammed his gavel. "Enough!" I could feel my pulse thundering in my ears. For the first time, it wasn't from fear. Clara looked at me, then at the judge. "If I may, there's one more piece of evidence." From the folder, she drew out a child's drawing, a crumpled piece of paper with bright crayons and uneven letters. Oliver's drawing. It showed a stick figure of a woman, me, with tears streaming down her face, standing behind bars. Beside me, another figure, taller, smiling, holding keys. The caption read, "Mommy says Grandma forgets too much, so she has to stay." The courtroom went utterly still. The judge took the paper, his expression heavy. "This was drawn by the child?" Clara nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, Oliver Haywood. Found in Mrs. Haywood's bedroom." My throat closed up. I couldn't speak, but I didn't need to. The silence spoke for me. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Haywood, do you wish to make a statement?" I rose slowly. My knees shook, but my voice was mine again. I looked at Tessa, who sat rigid now, her mask cracking with every breath. "You called it care," I began softly. "But you were burying me alive in my own home. You made me question my own memories. You took my medicine, my money, my words, and you told the world I was the one losing control. Tessa's lip trembled. You're delusional. No, I took a step forward. I was terrified, but not anymore, because now they can hear you, Tessa. They can all hear you. Her eyes darted toward Ethan, pleading, desperate. Say something. Tell them I was helping. Ethan stood slowly, his face pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Only silence. That silence was my victory. The judge cleared his throat, his tone firm. I'm suspending this guardianship petition immediately and ordering a formal investigation into potential elder abuse and financial fraud. He turned toward Tessa. Mrs. Haywood, you are hereby prohibited from any further contact with the respondent pending investigation. Tessa's lawyer sank into his chair. Tessa herself went rigid, like glass about to shatter. I exhaled shakily, my vision blurring as the world tilted around me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or cry. When the gavel struck, the sound felt like thunder, final and freeing. It was over, at least legally, but as I gathered my things, I turned toward Ethan, my son. The boy I'd raised with lullabies and scraped knees and second chances, he still couldn't look at me. Ethan, I whispered. He flinched, just barely, then turned away. That hurt more than anything Tessa had ever done. Clara touched my arm gently. You did it, she said softly. You're free, I nodded, blinking back tears. Freedom's a strange thing, I murmured. It comes back slow, like breath after drowning. We walked out into the sunlight. The air was cool against my skin, and for the first time in years, I could feel it, really feel it. Behind me, I heard the faint echo of Tessa's voice, shrill and distant. She'll pay for this! You'll all see. But her words no longer held power. I looked up at the sky, pale and wide and open. I already have, I whispered. The first morning in my new home, I woke up to sunlight. Not the filtered kind that sneaks through locked curtains, but full golden light spilling through open windows. It hit the faded wallpaper and the chipped dresser I'd found at a thrift shop. And for a moment, I just sat there, listening. No footsteps outside my door, no voices whispering behind walls, just birds and the faint hum of life beyond fear. Freedom doesn't come with a parade. It comes quietly, in the stillness between breaths. I made tea the way I liked it, strong and bitter, without anyone watching over my shoulder. The mug was chipped, the table wobbled, but it was mine. All of it was mine. Later that morning, I stepped outside into the small patch of earth behind the cottage. The soil was dark and damp, ready to be touched again. My hands trembled as I knelt down, digging into it. I hadn't gardened in years, not since before everything fell apart. My roses had died under Tessa's care. She'd said they were too much trouble, but here I could start again. I planted marigolds first, bright, defiant things that refused to fade even in heat. The earth smelled of promise, and as I pressed the roots into the ground, I whispered, "You're safe now." I wasn't talking to the flowers. By afternoon, there was a soft knock on the door. My heart jumped, a reflex I still hadn't unlearned. But when I opened it, the fear melted. Oliver stood there, holding a small paper bag and grinning up at me. "Hi, Grandma," he said shyly. "Dad dropped me off. He said I could stay till dinner." My throat tightened. "Of course, sweetheart. Come in." He looked older somehow, not in years, but in the way he carried himself. Like he'd seen too much, too soon. He set the paper bag on the table. "I brought cookies. The kind you like?" I smiled through the ache in my chest. You remembered. We sat together, dunking cookies into our tea, the silence between us warm, not heavy. Every so often he'd glance at me, as if checking to make sure I was really there. At one point, he asked quietly, "Mom says you don't like her anymore." I froze. The words stung, even softened by his innocence. I chose my answer carefully. "Sometimes people do things that hurt others, Oliver. And sometimes they tell stories to make those hurts seem smaller. But love doesn't disappear, even when it's buried under lies." He looked down at his cookie, thoughtful. "I don't like when people lie." "Neither do I said softly. "That's why we have to keep telling the truth, even when it's hard." He nodded, like he understood more than a child should. Then he looked up with a little smile. "Can we go outside? I want to see your flowers." So we did. We spent hours there, planting, watering, laughing. The sun dipped lower, painting everything gold. He made a tiny sign for the marigolds, Grandma's brave garden. When he finally left, I stood at the gate and watched his father's car pull away. Ethan didn't look up, didn't wave. The hurt flared, raw and sharp. I'd imagined that maybe, after court, after the truth, things would change. That he'd come to me, say he was sorry, say he'd been blind, but silence was his answer. Later that night, I sat by the window with a small notebook in my lap. A new one, clean pages untouched. My old one, the one they'd stolen, was gone forever, but I could start again. I wrote down everything I wanted to remember. Not the pain, but the strength it took to survive it. I wrote, "They took my house. They took my peace, but they didn't take my voice." I paused, my pen trembling. Then I added, "Truth doesn't always bring people back. Sometimes it just sets you free enough to stop waiting for them." I closed the notebook and looked around. The clock ticked softly. The air smelled faintly of marigolds from outside. I felt the faintest smile tug at my lips. Freedom wasn't loud. It was steady. It was the sound of my own heartbeat not racing anymore. A few weeks later, Clara visited. She brought a basket of groceries and a tired smile. "Place suits you," she said, glancing around. "Feels peaceful." "It is," I replied. "Mostly," she raised an eyebrow. "Mostly?" I hesitated. There are nights I still wake up expecting to hear the lock click. Or her voice. Sometimes I even dream I'm back there. Clara nodded knowingly. "Healing's not about forgetting, Margaret. It's about remembering without breaking." Her words sank deep. I exhaled, steady this time. "Then maybe I'm halfway there," she smiled. "Halfway's better than nowhere." Before leaving, she placed her hand on mine. "If you ever need anything, you call me." "Promise?" "I promise," I said. And I meant it. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I took one last look at my garden. The marigolds were thriving, and beneath them, tiny new shoots were pushing through, fragile, determined, alive. I thought of Ethan again. Of the look on his face when the truth finally broke through the courtroom noise. Shame, confusion, maybe even guilt, but not hatred. Somewhere, deep down, I hoped that the truth was working its quiet way through him, like sunlight through a cracked window. "I lost my son to lies," I whispered to the wind. "Maybe someday, truth will bring him back." The air stirred gently, warm against my skin, as if the world was listening. I smiled then, not the trembling, desperate smile of survival, but something softer, real. I went back inside, closed the door, and left it unlocked. For the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel the need to guard myself from the night. I brewed another cup of tea, sat by the window and watched the stars blink awake, freedom. I realized, doesn't erase the scars. It teaches you how to live with them, how to trace them without fear, how to let them remind you of what you overcame. And as the night deepened, I whispered one last truth, not for anyone else, but for me. I survived them. I survived everything. Months had passed since the courtroom, months of quiet mornings, careful breathing, and rebuilding something fragile inside me. I thought I'd closed that chapter, that my life had settled into a new rhythm. But life has a way of twisting the knife when you least expect it. It was a rainy afternoon when the phone rang. My hands were muddy from the garden. I'd been transplanting daisies near the gate, so I wiped them on my apron before answering. "Hello?" My voice sounded cautious, unsure. On the other end was Ethan. His voice was shaking. Not the quiet, controlled Ethan I remembered before, but raw, broken. "Mom, it's gone," he said, barely above a whisper. "Everything. Tessa drained our joint account. She vanished. She's gone." I dropped into the chair at my kitchen table, the cup of tea I'd just poured trembling in my hand. "What do you mean?" "She transferred everything last night," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "She left no trace, no note. No goodbye. I trusted her." The words echoed in me. "Trusted her. I thought of her face in the courtroom, the mask finally cracked, and of the long months I'd endured. It was my turn to be quiet. The rain drummed softly against my window. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Ethan said. "I should have listened." "I should have—" "You shouldn't blame yourself," I interrupted gently. "We didn't know," he swallowed hard. "She was family." His voice broke completely. "And she betrayed us." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his pain. "Evil doesn't always come with a stranger's face," I said softly, almost to myself. "Sometimes it sleeps in your house and calls itself family." There was a silence between us. Then he spoke again, quieter now. I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth," I told him. "That's the only place worth starting." We stayed on the line long after, speaking in soft fragments. No accusations now, only shared sorrow and something heavier. The bitter knowledge that betrayal can cut across every layer of trust we build. Later that evening, I went to my room and pulled out Oliver's latest drawing. It was folded neatly inside an envelope, the way he always left it for me without a word. I unfolded it slowly. There we were, me and him, holding hands under a blazing sun. No shadows, no fences, just light. It was simple, almost childlike, but it was everything. I ran my fingers over the pencil lines, feeling a strange rush of peace. Despite everything, despite the loss, the deceit, the pain, we had survived. I whispered to the empty room, "We survived because we found the truth." Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart and a sliver of sunlight poured into my garden. I stepped to the window and watched it land on my marigolds, bright and unyielding. Somehow it felt like a promise. And then I knew this story, my story, wasn't really over. It was still being written, not with lies, not with fear, but with truth, however bitter, however hard. I looked at the sketch again, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. And in that moment, I realized something. Survival wasn't about erasing the scars. It was about carrying them and letting them guide you toward something better. For me, that better was peace. The truth had set me free, and for now, that was enough. What would you do if someone you trusted betrayed you completely? Could you forgive, or would you walk away forever? Tell me in the comments below. If my story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of survival, truth, and hope. Until next time, protect your truth, guard your heart,